Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Shelly, and today I'm going to be talking through all of the books that I read in March, and I got through quite a few. I'm kind of shocked, and I keep on thinking, how do I want to go through these books? Do I want to do like worst to first? I think actually what I'm going to do is where did one of my books go? I will be right back, but I figured out how I wanted to do this. I'm going to go oldest written, oldest publication date to newest, to most present, most recent. So I will be right back. We're starting all the way with the ancients, since we're starting oldest to newest, oldest publication date to most recent. And we're starting with Sophocles, and these are the Theban plays, the Oedipus cycle. So this month I made a video about Antigone and Oedipus the king, and then I did finish Oedipus at Colonus, but I haven't made a video about it yet. Interestingly, I was fascinated by the plot twists in Oedipus the king. And when I was sharing the plot with you all, I was like, I don't really know what to make of this. It just seems like it's totally off the rails, and I'm not really sure I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be getting from this book. And a bunch of you came out in the comments very, very kindly, and thank you so much, because a lot of you were talking about the role of fate, which is an increasingly important role for the ancients. And I think in a lot of ways, it's what Sophocles and through Oedipus, the writer Sophocles is trying to understand, like, why do bad things happen to good people, even if we try our best to avoid them? And it is, I think in some ways, each play is a stab at that question. It was really interesting, and I think the best comment, though I can't remember who it's from, but thank you to that community member, that commenter, because I believe it was a she. No, I'm like, oh gosh. She was saying that Oedipus tries so hard to escape his fate, to be a good son, to not murder his father, to not marry his mother. He does all of these things in order to avoid the fate that was bestowed upon him, and yet he cannot escape it. And he still ends up following through with what his destiny was supposed to be, even though it's tragic. And he tries his darndest to not have it happen. And yet it still happens. And so in a lot of ways we feel sorry for Oedipus, because he was so valiantly fighting against fate, and much to his loss. So that was so interesting. And then finally, as the idea of fate and can we escape our destinies, and why do bad things happen to good people, all of these questions are muddling around in my mind. It's like I can see it everywhere. So actually that brings me to, so I really, really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it. Though please go in, I made the mistake, so you don't have to. Go in looking for the theme of fate, because I think you will get a lot more from it. So I want to reread it with that specific theme in mind. Since we're going in chronological order, I will try and remember to also name the publication date. But these plays were written around 450 BC. Then we have, written in 1824, James Hogg's The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner. I read this with my friend Sonja, and with a group out there, which had just a clan: Shawn D. Steadfast, Vin from Revenant Reads. We also had Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, though I don't think he actually picked this up, and Mark from Book Time with Elvis. I think that's everyone. Anyways, if not, I'm so sorry, and I will try and leave their names in the show notes down below. But we read this and discussed this in a Voxer group, and a group sort of offline, or not on YouTube. And this is interesting because it is about a young man who It follows a young man who is born and grown up and raised to be a Calvinist. If you know anything about Calvinists, they are believers of predestination, that God has predestined all of the things in our lives, which sounds a lot like fate, doesn't it? And only those of his elect, God's elect, are going to be going to heaven. And sort of around a certain point in the story, the young man in which we are following believes wholeheartedly that he is one of God's elect, and therefore all of the sins that he does are justified. So it was like a little bit of a twist on fate. It was like this idea that, those that God smiles down upon fairly have the right to do bad things. It was really interesting, but I think ultimately that theme was the underlining message of it all, but more pertinently, it is about the fights that we have with ourselves, like the evils that we fight within ourselves, though it's done in a really odd way. This is just a strange little book, and I was going to count this as my March Mystery Madness type thing, because it would definitely fit for March Mystery Madness, but I actually read, or I'm almost done with an actual mystery, so I'm not going to actually count that. Or maybe this counts as like the second mystery I read, or the first, and the other book is the second mystery. I'm going down a rabbit trail for which I'm sure nobody is following me. But anyways, this is a strange book. If you have watched Fight Club, if you know Edgar Allan Poe's William Wilson, even Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, is that right? Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I think that's it. Then this feels like the precursor to all of those stories, because this predates all of them. Moving up 150 years to 1972, we have Mary Renault's The Persian Boy. And this is one of the middle book in her Alexander the Great series. And I didn't finish this. This was a DNF. I got to 193 pages of about 420. And here's the deal. So we are following Alexander the Great through the eyes of a eunuch who has a very deep and special relationship with Alexander. And we are following Alexander in like the prime of his life. He is conquering, he is defeating, he is doing really well. And you can really tell that Mary Renault loves Alexander. It is a beautiful portrait of him as a person. I mean, almost like he can do no wrong. He's very fair. He's very, physically, he's beautiful. The way that he runs his military, so to speak, is very justified, I guess. Maybe that word's just on my mind. Anyhow, so you can tell that Mary Renault is writing Alexander with a lot of love in her eyes. And of course, she's writing it through a character that loves Alexander and has a lot of complicated feelings towards him. Here's what didn't work for me is that I picked this up, I think back in January, and then I set it down for a couple of weeks because I got busy, and then I picked it up again, and I was getting reinvested, but I think that I lost some of the threads of the plot. I was losing who people were along the way, and so as I got to page 193, I realized that I didn't really exactly know what was going on. I didn't really have a firm grasp of the characters and the places that we were at. And so I think what I want to do, well, I did DNF it for now. I do want to come back to this because I did love the writing, but maybe I'm like coming up with a plan in my mind to like justify the DNF. But maybe I will want to read a biography of Alexander first and then read this fictional portrayal of him, and maybe I will get a little more out of it, because so far I just felt really lost in its pages, and I hate that feeling. I really dislike that feeling, and I know that this has been highly recommended from people that I really appreciate and admire. Steve Donahue. So I know it's a good book. I know that there's goodness in here, and I could feel it and I could read it. I just didn't like that I was getting lost along the way. Moving up to 1988, we have a book that I haven't quite finished yet, but it is so good so far. And this is the mystery for which I referenced at the earlier parts of the video. But I picked up Elizabeth George's A Great Deliverance. This is book 1 of Inspector Lynley, the Inspector Lynley series. Elizabeth George has been writing this for her entire career, the series. There's something like 22 books in the series. She started it in 1988. The most recent one has come out in like 2002, or 2000, oh no, not 2002, 2022, like 2022. So she's been writing this series for an incredibly long time, and this is the first installment of that series. And this is what I like about it. I'm not quite done, and I'm about 60 pages from the end. And, you know, maybe my feelings will change and I will update you if they do. But this feels like, plot-wise, it's a very straightforward mystery. However, the pacing is very slow, which is what I love. I'm like, this is a mystery done right, because I feel like she's not in a rush to get anywhere. It's not about the plot twists. And there's a heavy focus on characters, specifically Inspector Lynley and his partner, and the way that they contrast and sort of rub up against each other and grate against each other, and how those contrasts are actually kind of charming. I just really, really, really love it. And you can tell there's 2 main characters and then 2 subsidiary, probably not the right word, 2 secondary characters. And you can just tell that like she's pouring a lot into those characters. And I have it on good authority from Deb, who is a friend of mine, who also watches the booktube space, that these novels build on one another, and her books just get longer and longer as her career progresses. And so if you like the first one, if you like what she's doing, there's a lot to look forward to. This first book is 400 pages, and it only gets, it only gets better from here, I suppose. And so I'm just loving it. I'm loving this read so much, and I'm so glad I picked it up. From 1988 to 2002, we have Moist Sand and Gravel, which is by a poet. This is a poetry book by Paul Muldoon. This is one of my 23 classics in 2023 picks. And this is the poetry of Paul Muldoon, a winner of the Pulitzer Prize. I wish, honestly, I loved it more than I did. The poems for which he is messing around with words when there's a lot of wordplay, those are the ones that I felt most invested in and most delighted by. However, the rest of it is and was forgettable. It took me forever to read this. It took me forever to read this teeny little slim thing. And when I was done, I was like, thank goodness. That was the feeling that I had. I was like, thank goodness. I'm sorry, Paul Muldoon, we're gonna have to break up. From 2002 to 2008, I picked up a book that was recommended to me by one of my students. I am a teacher, and one of my students recommended that I read Amulet, which is a series done by Kazu Kibuishi, who is actually an American graphic novel artist and writer. And there's like a whole series of these Amulet books. This is the first installment, and I thought it was very charming, very, very imaginative. It immediately has this sense of adventure, and that you're going on an adventure, on a journey, and it was just like a lot of fun. I actually have the next 3 installments waiting for me on like my book table, and I'm excited to get to them. But yeah, actually I think in the previous months, like in February and January, I had a little more of a heavy focus on graphic novels, and this month I didn't. So whenever I'm in that mood for a graphic novel, I have a few waiting for me. But otherwise, I can highly recommend at least the first installment of this series. Fast forwarding a few years, and we're bringing ourselves up to 2013 or 2014. I don't know. 2013, which was actually my mammoth. And this I read with Anne Novella, who is an incredible buddy reader. I've referenced her a bunch over the last month or so, and we decided to pick up Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch. And in this book, we are following Theo, and I think at the heart of this book, it is talking about art. It is talking about grief and memory, and also it's a coming of age story, which I love, and I loved the characters. I felt like Donna Tartt's writing was cinematic and nuanced, and I really, really, really loved what she was doing in this novel. I just loved it, and I was so glad to finally pick up this this Pulitzer Prize winning novel, because it has been sitting on my shelves for years, and so it was really nice to get that little gentle nudge from Anne to finally pick this up, and I'm so glad that I read it with her. And man, Donna Tartt, she's fantastic. She's fantastic, and it is a shame. I'm going to tell you now, it is a shame that she only has 3 books out there. That is the worst, okay? And so this is the first Donna Tartt. I'm currently reading The Secret History. I'm going to keep my lips zipped for how that's going. But yeah, this was a great success for me. I really, I want to talk about it even more. I love the conversation about art. I love the way that she portrayed it, because that is one of my pet peeves in writing, is the way authors write about art. My husband knows this about me. Fraser knows this about me. Everybody knows this about me. That like I have a very particular pet peeve about the way art is portrayed in books. And let me tell you, Donna Tartt did it right, okay? She knows what she's doing. Very quickly going quite modern. So we go from 2013 to 2019 with The River by Peter Heller. This was the Up to No Good book club pick, which is a book club that meets offline. In it, we have Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, Fraser at Springboard That, and then friends and community members, Angela, Deb, and Sonja. And we read this. This is my first Peter Heller book. His most known book is The Dog Stars, I think it's called. But The River is one of his, I think, newer releases. So this tells the story of 2 friends deciding to kind of forget college, they're college students, to forget college for a minute and to just take a canoe downriver, and from there an adventure starts. I thought Peter Heller's description of characters, his sense of adventure, his sense of the outdoors was incredible. Like, it was just so lovely. Where it kind of lost me was near about the halfway mark. The plot starts to take over the story. And if you know me as a reader, I don't like a plot-heavy book. I just don't. Says the girl reading an Elizabeth George mystery. But I'm just not a fan when the plot takes over. It takes over everything. And I feel like that's what kind of did it in this book. So some of it worked, some of it didn't, but I could see why Peter Heller is so well loved in the reader space. And it was an enjoyable book. I will say that the first half started off so strong, but the second half just was quite middling for me. Now we're coming up to like quite new releases. I have a nonfiction book, The Woman They Could Not Silence by Kate Moore. This was given to me by my friend Sandy at Miss Reads a Lot, and this is about a woman named Elizabeth. What's her last name? This tells the story of Elizabeth Packard, and she in the 1860s in the U.S. By the way, I was like, I did not know that we did this kind of treatment to women. But she actually was institutionalized in an insane asylum for basically having opinions that differed from her husband. This is a fascinating story of survival and believing what you know is right and fighting for what is right. It is just incredible. I actually want to give this to my mom because she is a huge fan of nonfiction, primarily memoirs, but this is more of Kate Moore is focusing on a single individual in history, and it's just really, really interesting. I will say that I really, really loved the descriptions of the insane asylum and when Elizabeth Packard was in there, and then as she continues her journey, it's still a really interesting journey, but to me, like ever so slightly less engaging, just because you start to get to laws and lobbying and trying to change laws, which I think is interesting, but sometimes follows a similar pattern to other things that I've read, Whereas I felt like the gritty details of being inside the insane asylum, that experience, and what she does while she's in there was just really like absolutely riveting. Oh my gosh, we're ending on a dud, but it's the newest book, like newest release book that is out there. So we have Woman Eating by Claire Coda. This was released in 2021, 22? I'm not sure. I think it's a 2022 release. This is about a vampire who is more interested in human food and doesn't want to eat people. And so she has this eating disorder in which she fantasizes about food all the time, and she's like obsessed with food, but she's not actually giving herself the nourishment that she needs. It is interesting. It's about a woman kind of on her own for the first time. It's about her relationship with her mother, which was very odd and awkward. And it was okay. It was okay. The author did something in here in which I hate, which is like she wrote a character that loves art and that describes art. And it's like, I don't think that that's a substitute for writing a personality. And I feel like some authors do that. They're like, I'm going to make my character really love this artist and then describe it and say what it means to them. And it was like, I just don't like that. I just don't. It's like the wrong way to write about art. I actually really need to get going, but it left me with more questions than answers is what I'll say. And unfortunately, I really can't recommend it. But yeah, that's it from me. What did you read this month? What was your best read this month? I would love to know. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.